This is a special edition of The Jensen Show.
Why not go to the best source available, and that is the lovely, the wonderful, the great David Icke. David, welcome.
Thank you, mate.
Nice to see you again. Everything okay?
Yeah, getting on, you know, and looking forward to visiting the Netherlands.
When is that?
Well, probably about 2058.
2058. Yeah, and since we're both superhumans, we'll still be alive then, by then, David, for sure.
Wow. I'm in another dimension by then. You know?
My God, that keeps going on. But that's not the thing I wanted to talk to you about today. I know you've studied this extensively. And I already said in my introduction, listen, we're not going to get into the anti-Semitism and the accusations. And I know you love people, you love Jewish people, you love human consciousness. We're all one. We've established that so many times, it's tiring and it's childish to having to keep repeating it. So we ignore that because we're intelligent, normal human beings, common sense human beings. But you've studied Israel a lot, of course, and I call it, you know, Project Israel, because it's basically, you know, I see it as a project that it's been in the news every day ever since I was born, and it continues, it never stops. So there's a project going on. And criticism once again. Oh, I'm so tiring. Criticism of Israel is not criticism of Jewish people. All right, we've established that. But I wanted to get to the origin of Israel because there's so much misleading information about the origin of Israel, how it started, when it started, why it was created. And can I just play you one clip, and then you get the floor. Okay. It's a clip from a very good friend of ours who recently passed away. It's Lord Jacob Rothschild. You know, the parties we celebrated there at Wollaston, David, you and me together with Jacob Rothschild. No, but he mentioned, he was interviewed about it, and he basically said that his family was the major player in creating Israel. And I know you had some other take on that, so I'll play a bit of that clip, and then, you know, you can pick it up from there. Is that all right?
Okay. Yep.
In modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words. Dear Lord Rothschild.
Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
It's an interesting question because it was primarily a movement from Eastern Europe, but they didn't clarify who was in charge of that movement. And in addition, it was, after all, in Great Britain. So they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
So Walter received the Balfour Declaration, and I have a copy here. And I wonder if I could possibly ask you to read it for us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to put on my spectacles to make sure I read it accurately. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours, Arthur Balfour.
And here it is, the Balfour Declaration. What do you feel when you see it here?
I genuinely feel it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people. If you think it took 3,000 years to get to this. And then you say, how did this miracle happen? It's the most incredible piece of opportunism. I mean, if you think you had an impoverished would-be scientist, Chaim Weizmann, who somehow gets to England, meets a few people, including members of my family, seduces them. He has such great charm and conviction. He gets to Balfour, and he unbelievably persuades Balfour and Lloyd George, the Prime Minister, and most of the ministers, that this idea of the national home for Jews should be allowed to take place. I mean, it's so unlikely. And then he's, starts to fight a difficult battle with the British cabinet, and this letter goes through 5 drafts, as you know. And in the end, it comes out as a rather compromising letter. I mean, the essential point is there for the Jewish community to fasten on to. You have the first bit, which promises a national home rather than the national home, and then you have the bit that nothing that's to be done should in any way harm the Arab community.
So basically, this is how he explains it. David, take it away.
Well, I'm sorry, mate. I'm losing the will to bloody live listening to that, because there's virtually nothing in what he said that is true. And I'll come to the real background in a minute. But I think, first of all, you have to ask yourself why we in 2025 and earlier, 1948, when Israel was established, that we are allowing an Old Testament written by who knows when, in who knows what circumstances, and for who knows what reason, to dictate to us what happens now. And the whole story of ancient Israel and the Old Testament story is provably complete bloody nonsense. We're supposed to have Moses leading his people out of Egypt and into the desert where they wandered for, 40 years, which is a esoteric numerological significant number. You see 40s and 12s all over the place in the Bible. 40 days and 40 nights of rain, was it, and all the rest of it. Well, you have a look at the area of this desert that Moses led them into, and it's absolutely bloody tiny. When I was allowed into Israel, just in 1993, when I went for research purposes, I virtually drove around much of it in a bloody day. And so the whole story is nonsense. And so we get this Israeli historian at an Israeli university, Shlomo Sand. And he set out to prove that the biblical story was true. Very quickly, he found the opposite. And he wrote a book called The Invention of the Jewish People. You then have the stage of this story where you had Khazaria. Khazaria was a land between the Christian Empire and the Muslim Empire. And it was in the 700s that the king, who was known as the Kagan, which is why Kagan's such a common Jewish name today, he decided that he was going to have a mass conversion to Judaism. And the Khazarians were in the southern Russia, Caucasus kind of area. And as their empire broke up, these converted Jewish believers that had no connection to ancient Israel, which, as I say, is doubtful enough anyway, that story. And they started moving up into Northern Europe, Eastern Europe, and then eventually into Western Europe. And these were the so-called Ashkenazi Jews, which is what they became known as, who were targeted by the Nazis. And from there was this massive movement as a result of what the Nazis did to Israel, as it became known, Palestine as was, and to the United States. So, for instance, one of the things that I think people need to grasp, you rightly say there that Israel's been in the news constantly, like for as long as we've been alive. Certainly I'm now 73, and it goes way back into my childhood, this Israel theme. And so if you said to most people, how many Jewish people are there in the world, they would say some number that was vastly in excess of the real number, which is, according to Jewish sources, anything between 15 and 17 million people in a population globally of 8 billion. And that's kind of a shocker for most people straight away, because of the focus on that tiny, tiny number within the global population. More than that, basically around 7 million, something like that, maybe less, are in America, and something similar in number are in Israel. And so there's you're up into your 14 millions already. The next country, France, for the number of Jewish people in their borders, is 700,000, or it actually might be even 400,000. But let's go with 700,000. And then after that, there's a massive drop-off in terms of countries. Like, I'm banned from Australia for being, quote, anti-Semitic. And the number of Jewish people in Australia is 0.0, and on it goes. So the focus upon Israel and Jewish people has to be for another reason, because it's not numbers. And so we need to go. We can pick it up in the far ancient world with the story that cannot be supported by history. Mm-hmm. But let's pick it up in the 1600s, when there was a guy called Sabbatai Zevi, and he claimed to be the Jewish Messiah, which will be significant, the Jewish Messiah, as we get into modern events. And he got, for his time, enormous numbers of people supporting him and believing that that's who he was. He operated in the area that we now call Israel and Gaza, There was a guy called Nathan of Gaza that basically was his version of John the Baptist, who promoted him and encouraged him in his belief that that's who he was. And then the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, the Muslim Ottoman Empire, which controlled that land, basically said to Zevi, and Sabbatai Zevi. Sabbatai means Saturn, by the way, which is the god of so many religions, although most people don't realize that. And the Sultan said to him, look, you got a choice, mate. You either prove that's who you are, which of course he couldn't, or you convert to Islam, or there'll be trouble. And so Zevi converted to Islam, but he didn't really. A significant number of his followers were aghast at this and, walked away, but a lot didn't. And they operated in the Ottoman Empire, Muslim Ottoman Empire, as what they called the Donma, which means to turn. But they didn't turn. They ran not a Jewish philosophy, but an inversion of it. And so many times in the books I've pointed out that this whole global cult, as I call it, that's driving humanity to dystopia, is an inverted mentality. Everything's upside down. This is why Satanists use the inverted cross and the inverted pentagram as the symbols, because it symbolizes the fact that they invert everything. And so if Judaism had a fast day, then what became known, this cult, as Sabbateanism, Sabbatai Zevi's Sabbateanism, would have a feast day. They ran this whole Sabbatean operation as a cult, where the members of the cult interbred with each other and not outside of it. And they began to develop a theme which goes on into modern times, and a skill in infiltrating target religions, target cultures, posing as advocates of those cultures and religions, manipulating themselves into positions of power, influence, control, and taking them over. So Sabbateanism was born, and it's not a Jewish philosophy. It's in so many ways an anti-Jewish philosophy, which is why I have said so many times, no one needs to know this story more than Jewish people, because they've been shafted and misled more than anyone else. So Sabbateanism was born, and then in the next century, the 1700s, along came Jacob Frank. Jacob Frank was a Polish Jewish guy who has been described by Jewish historians as, one in particular, as, quote, one of the most evil people in Jewish history. And what Frank claimed was that he was the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi, and was the reincarnation of the Jewish patriarch Jacob. And he became connected, here we go, to the Rothschilds. And what Frank did was take Sabbateanism, which became known to many people as Sabbatean Frankism as a result of him. He took it into even greater depths of depravity and manipulation. Part of what Jacob Frank did was to infiltrate the Roman Church, Roman Catholic Church. And they've controlled it ever since, the Sabbateans. It was they that did for Pope John Paul I, who was poisoned after the secret society Freemasonic significant number of days, 33. Because this Pope, obviously they picked the wrong guy, was about to expose the secret society and Freemasonic control of the Vatican by external forces. And you might remember, mate, that in the late 70s, there was the scandal in Italy of a secret society called Propaganda Due, headed by a guy called Licio Gelli, who was a Mussolini fascist, and, as a result of being one, a close associate of Ronald Reagan and his then Vice President, Father George Bush. And Gelli was arrested, and documents were found that indicated, or indeed confirmed, never mind indicated, that Propaganda Due was controlling the Vatican, but not only that, was controlling all aspects of Italian society. So within the ranks of Propaganda Due was politicians, of course, including Silvio Berlusconi, who was Prime Minister subsequently of Italy a number of times, journalists, government officials, military officials, intelligence officials. They controlled the lot. And what was interesting is they found that the secret society was broken up into sections, and each section had a section head. And those section heads only knew the initiates of Propaganda Due in their section. The only people that knew all the members and who they were was Licio Gelli and a small coterie around him. And you had members of this secret society interacting with each other in their jobs in politics and government and military, who had no idea that both of them were members of this secret society. This is how it works. So one of the scandals related to the Vatican Bank, which, of course, the Sabbatean Frankists controlled by this time. And there was a guy called, what was his name? He was a guy who ran the Vatican Bank effectively. And he, when this scandal broke, ran to London to try to get away, because he knew where the bodies were buried. Roberto Calvi, his name was.
It's amazing where you get all these names. How you remember that? I'm sitting here listening. Please continue.
And Roberto Calvi was then found hanging under Blackfriars Bridge in at the entrance to the City of London, which is completely owned by this Sabbatean and the global cult, the wider global cult. And in his pockets were masonry. Everything these people do, they do with symbolism. And so the Blackfriars Bridge has symbolic pulpits in it. If you find a picture of it, you'll see the pulpits along the bridge. And that was a symbol of a Dominican friars called the Blackfriars Bridge. And they used to wear black gowns and what have you, which is what the Sabbatean inner core wear. And the symbolism of hanging Calvi under Blackfriars Bridge is that, with masonry in his pockets, was there for all to see. So the reason I tell that story is to indicate how this Sabbatean cult expanded using secret society infiltration to take over much of the world and the institutions of the world. It created a lot of them. So if we go back then to the 1700s and Jacob Frank, he eventually, in 1776, got together with a guy called Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jewish guy who was educated by the Jesuits, which are massively connected into this global cult, and with Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the founder of the Rothschild dynasty, in the sense of the Rothschild family before were called Bauer, B-A-U-E-R. They were a Middle Ages occult family. And he, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, changed the name to Rothschild. Why? Because they lived in a house in Frankfurt which had a red Star of David on the house, which of course is very famously connected to Jewish people, but actually is not an exclusive Jewish symbol at all. It's an ancient esoteric symbol, and actually represents Saturn. And so the German for red shield or red sign was Rothschild, basically. And so that's where the Rothschild name comes from. It comes from the Star of David, six-pointed star, on the house of the Bauers, the Rothschilds in Frankfurt. And when the Rothschilds, and we're going to come to this, manipulated Israel into being, on the flag to this day is the symbol from which the name Rothschild comes. So the three of them, Weishaupt, Rothschild, and Jacob Frank, created, although Frank is pushed into the background in the historical stories of this, they created the Bavarian Illuminati in 1776. And the Bavarian Illuminati were behind many revolutions, including the French Revolution, to change the nature of those societies, those countries. And so the Sabbateans started infiltrating countries, cultures, religions, the whole thing. And to the point where, if you look, and I have, at the original documents listing the people in positions of power at the time of the Russian Revolution, was it 1917? And these documents were uncovered for a book written in 1920 about the end of the Tsars in Russia. And the writer, I think his name was Wilton, went back to original documents of the revolution. And he found that and I'm not exaggerating when I say the vast, overwhelming majority of people involved in the Russian Revolution in positions of power and influence were Jewish. And again, look at the numbers in the world compared with overthrowing an entire country and its structure in terms of Russia. But they weren't Jewish at the core. They were Sabbatean, fake Jewish.
This is such an important thing and such an important point, because I think you also get tired of people saying, oh, it's the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. No, the story is the way you tell it. It's different.
Yeah, this is the point. What this Sabbatean Frankist secret society cult does is use Jewish people as the cover, the shield, the red shield, you might say, for stopping legitimate investigation and exposure of their actions. And they do this by, when people like me expose the Sabbateans, who hate Jews, by the way, genuine ones, when I expose them, they say, you're saying that all Jewish people are doing what you say we're doing. Well, no, I don't. I don't say that at all. I say you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I expose Netanyahu and his background, Sabbatean, I'm not saying that every Jewish person in Israel is doing what he's doing. You've only got to see the tens of thousands of Jewish people that protest against Netanyahu in Israel to confirm that. So the Russian Revolution was a Sabbatean revolution, and it wasn't the only one either. Like I say, the French one was, and many others. And because the Rothschilds are not Jewish, they are Sabbatean. And this is the mentality, not least through Jacob Frank, that created the Bavarian Illuminati, which became a massive part of this global cult, ultimately, which has many other elements, not just this one. But this is a significant one. And so we then come to this whole story of Israel, where, see, the Rothschilds, they got together with other Jewish, I would say Sabbatean, banking families in Germany, the Warburgs, the Goldsmiths, and others. And they basically created the modern banking system. It was the system on which it's based existed before, but they really turned it into what it became. And of course, you have the stories of the sons of Mayer Amschel Rothschild that were sent off to the major cities of Europe, to Paris and to London, and to set up satellites of the whole Rothschild banking dynasty, which became extraordinarily wealthy, and not least by, first of all, manipulating conflicts, and then funding, lending money to both sides in the conflicts they've created, and making a frickin' fortune and taking over whole countries economically as a result.
And the creating of conflict is basically something they admit to. It's even on their website.
Yeah. So you've got Nathan Rothschild. He turns up in London, the city of London, takes over the city of London. And at the time of the Battle of Waterloo, where the British were fighting the French, it was obviously considered the outcome of this war, this Battle of Waterloo, was considered fundamental to the future of the City of London and the share prices, etc. And by this time, and again, this is through the Illuminati that had now become massive after 1776, the Rothschilds had far better communication systems, which were relatively basic compared with what they are today, but they had better ones than the government of Britain. So they were waiting in the City of London, and this is actually an official Rothschild story.
It is. That's what I just said. It's on their website.
Yeah, they knew, and significant, the people that were involved in the City of London knew that the Rothschilds had better communications than the British government, and therefore the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo would be known by the Rothschilds first. So they were watching Nathan Rothschild. And Nathan Rothschild then had people, and oh God, this is absolutely the way the whole thing works. He had people who were assets, all prepared to start selling his stocks. So he started selling. And, of course, the City of London people thought, we've lost the Battle of Waterloo, because that's why Nathan Rothschild is selling his stocks. What he was doing, as the stocks absolutely crashed, people were jumping out of buildings, committing suicide. He had his agents buying up all these stocks that had collapsed.
Dirt cheap prices. And increased the wealth of the London Rothschild operation by phenomenal amounts of money in a single day, because he knew that the Battle of Waterloo had been won by the British in Wellington. They were the original purveyors of fake news, huh?
Yeah, 100%, and they still are. And so this is how the whole thing was expanded and advanced, to the point where, through control of money and control of politicians, they controlled countries on a vast scale. And so we come to the first Zionist Congress in 1897, because the whole idea of Zionism, which is a political philosophy, which many Jewish people oppose and many non-Jewish people support. It's a political philosophy. It's not a race. It's not a culture. It's a political philosophy. So they had this first Jewish Congress, Zionist Congress, in 1897 in Basel, Switzerland, which started the whole process that led to the creation of Israel via the then British Empire. And the whole story that we heard in the clip from Jacob Rothschild will be put in another context very shortly. And what most people don't realize is that first Zionist Congress was supposed to be held in Munich, Germany. That's where they planned it to start with. It had to be moved to Switzerland because of opposition from Jews in Germany. Because they were saying, look, we don't want to move to bloody Palestine. We're happy where we are. And then along came Adolf Hitler eventually, and they had a rethink. Coincidence? Some of us say not. Anyway, what happened then is this whole Zionist thing started to expand and become policy. So let's come to the Balfour Declaration, which was in 1917, during the First World War, when there was this declaration by Lord Arthur Balfour, the Foreign Secretary of the British government, that the British government and its empire supported a Jewish homeland in what was then Palestine. And the Balfour Declaration, you would think that would be him standing up in Parliament and declaring something. Well, as we've seen, it was a letter. And it was a letter from Lord Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild that declared the British government supported this homeland for Jewish people in what was then Palestine. Here's the background that Jacob missed. He missed in that clip. I don't know why. He must have forgot. In the late part of the 19th century, the last few years, the Rothschilds created a secret society based in London called the Round Table. And they made as its head Cecil Rhodes. Now, Cecil Rhodes was a Rothschild agent who plundered southern Africa for the Rothschilds. He was the one that would go into one tribe of in the south of Africa, and he would tell them this other tribe was about to attack them. He would tell the other side that the other side was going to attack them. Then he'd create a war, and then when one tribe was dominating in this war, he would go to the other and he would say, look, the only way you're going to survive is to come under the protection of the British Empire. And this is one way, there were others, that those tribal peoples of southern Africa were absorbed into the British Empire, what became South Africa and Zimbabwe, Rhodesia before.
But that's basically the strategy. That's basically the strategy for every war up until now, isn't it? The way you describe
absolutely.
it.
Kissinger was Henry Kissinger was a Sabbatean asset who specialized in, was called diplomacy. But actually it was exactly what I've just described in Southern Africa. So Cecil Rhodes was the guy who took over the diamond and gold mines in South Africa for the Rothschilds, not least through a family called the Oppenheimers, who were connected to the Rothschilds, obviously. So then you had this Cecil Rhodes, who was head of this Round Table Secret Society, and the funder of the secret society was Lord Rothschild, as we've heard from Jacob there. But there's another aspect to this. An inner circle member, initiate of the Round Table, was Lord Arthur Balfour. And so the Balfour Declaration, which started the ball rolling into the creation of Israel in 1948, was a letter sent by an inner circle member of the Round Table, Rothschild Secret Society, to Lord Rothschild, who funded the secret society and created it, in effect. And then at the end of the First World War, you had the Versailles Conference, and as I show in my books, all the leaders at Versailles of the different countries were advised by ultra-Zionists, whether it's Woodrow Wilson from the United States or whoever it was. They had these ultra-Zionist advisors. This is where much of the manipulation happens with the advisors. And what the Versailles so-called peace conference did was impose extraordinary levels of reparations on Germany, which made it impossible for Germany to ever recover from what was imposed upon them. And you had the Weimar Republic in Germany, as it was called, where inflation was almost beyond the imagination. I heard a story just the other day. A Jewish person was telling the story. No, it was a German person. She wasn't Jewish, telling the story of how the father would bring his wages home, and immediately the mother had to run out with the money to buy food, because the longer she left it in a day, the more and more and more that food would cost. That's the scale of inflation we're talking about. And it set the scene for the arrival of a savior, Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, who appealed to all these people who were going through this nightmare experience, and appealed to the pride of German people, German pride. And he then imposed upon the German people the Nazi philosophy, which included targeting Jewish people, most of whom were not Sabbateans, and who had rejected the Zionist Congress of 1897 to the point where it had to be moved to another country. And so what happened then in Germany during the Second World War led to what happened immediately afterwards, which was this massive movement of people, Jewish people, out of Germany and Western Europe and into America and into Palestine, which became Israel. But there's another story relating to the land of Palestine that we need to go back to. It happened during the First World War and eventually put an end to the Ottoman Empire in 1922. It involves a guy who became famous thanks to a movie starring Peter O'Toole, and it was called Lawrence of Arabia. Famous. But who was this Lawrence of Arabia on which that film was based? He was called T.E. Lawrence, and he was a British military intelligence operative. And his job was to go to Palestine and tell the Palestinians that if they supported the British Empire in removing the Ottoman Empire from their land, then when that was done, the British Empire would give independence to those people. But of course, T.E. Lawrence well knew that was not the idea. The idea was to remove the Ottoman Empire so that Israel, as laid out in the Balfour Declaration, could be established. And it was called the Arab Revolt. And what happened is the Ottoman Empire was driven out. It collapsed completely, as I say, in 1922. And the Palestinians were not given independence by the British Empire. What happened at the Versailles Peace Conference is that Britain was given the, quote, mandate to run that area we call Palestine. And then the Rothschilds started. They began funding massive influxes of people, Jewish people, out of Germany and Europe into Palestine. And they took it over through the most grotesque levels of violence involving terrorist organizations like the Stern Gang and Irgun, infamous. We had the bombing of the St. David's Hotel in Palestine that was then becoming Israel, killed a lot of people, and it was done by the Jewish terrorist groups. And eventually, the British were driven out of that land, and the state of Israel was declared in 1948, which had America being the first country to recognize it, staggeringly. Not really. Mm. And what has happened since is that the Israeli government, of course, there was this massive number of people, like hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, fled their own land as a result of this terrorism, and have never been allowed back. Whereas if you're Jewish and you live anywhere in the world, you have a right to live in Israel. And the terrorism was grotesque. And I'll come to another aspect of that in a second. So more and more land has been taken from the Palestinians, to the point now where they officially have the West Bank and officially have Gaza, with a joke, and they're being removed from Gaza, not least with the help of Donald Trump, and the targeting of West Bank land and West Bank Palestinian-owned properties has now reached a frenzy. And this is from Jewish media sources. Miriam Adelson, who is the wife of the late Sheldon Adelson, both of them were, in his case, vehement, ultra Zionists. Sheldon Adelson was a casino magnate in Las Vegas and had other businesses. He was a funder of Trump. He was the biggest funder of Trump in his first two elections. He was was a funder of Netanyahu. So you get the picture. And since his demise, he put about $200 million into Trump's election campaigns. Since he died, his wife Miriam has taken over. She's an ultra Zionist who wants the whole of Israel and even Greater Israel, as it's called, which is including other countries, to be realized. And she handed over $100 million to Trump in his election campaign. This one just passed. And she included in the deal the fact that at some point in Trump's presidency, he will sanction and support the annexation of the West Bank by Israel and the Israeli government. And if you look at the maps, there ain't a lot of the West Bank left that the Palestinians have any control over. In fact, they have no control over any of it. But I mean, the where they actually live.
When people talk about a two-state solution, I mean, what's left? What's left? What's left?
See, yeah, you raise a great point there, mate, because if you want to ignore, because what this whole thing has been since Israel was established is a buying time operation. Buying time to take over the lot and then start to pick off other countries as well and other land around Israel, and for the Greater Israel project, which is real. So you need to buy time. So you have talks about talks. And then you get close to the agreement.
Talks about talks, yeah. Let's talk about having another talk.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But it's all buying time, you see. Yeah. So what's been happening is time has been bought for the Israeli government to take over more and more of the former land of Palestine. When Sheldon Adelson funded Trump, part of the deal of his money was that during the first Trump presidency, Trump would move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, very, very more than symbolic, in terms of the Palestinian future. And he did. And his ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Israel at the time, was a guy called David Friedman, who was a bankruptcy lawyer who helped with the Rothschilds bail out Trump when he Trump's an appalling businessman, right? He couldn't run a lemonade stall, right?
Couldn't run a bath.
He couldn't. No, he's pathetic as a businessman, but the image says otherwise. And there was a time when Trump, because Trump's whole history is being Sabbatean controlled. The guy called Roy Cohn, who was an infamous, corrupt, vicious lawyer. He was his mentor. He was Trump's mentor.
He was his hero. His hero.
Yeah.
He talks about him like his hero. This was a creepy guy.
Yeah.
To put it mildly.
Creepy. Oh, creepy. Yeah. But he, Trump admits, you can see it on the internet, the clip. He admits, I think it was around 1990, something like that, that he personally owned or owed $1 billion. Never mind his companies. He was
personally.
He was
How do you do that? How do you?
Well, what he did is, because he's an idiot, he built new casinos and bought another one, Taj Mahal, in Atlantic City, and got himself into the most catastrophic financial straits. It was over for Trump.
Yeah.
But along came
Wilbur Smith.
a guy, Wilbur Ross.
Wilbur Ross. Yeah, Wilbur Ross.
Who worked for as a bankruptcy guy for the Rothschilds for 24 years. And he put together, with the Rothschilds, a group of 72 banks. That's how many he needed to bail out Trump. So the Sabbateans have controlled Trump since way, 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 way back. And it's obvious. You know, I see these people in the alternative media who are now going, oh, well, he seems to be controlled by Israel. You mean you didn't see before when you were promoting him and saying vote for him?
But listen, banks let you go bankrupt for owing $100,000. But 900 billion, I think, 900 million to $1 billion. I mean, that's the number. They're different powers going on there.
He owed more than that, though. His companies owed more than that. That was him personally. He said I personally owed $1 billion. So he was then brought to office, funded by Sheldon Adelson, who funded Netanyahu, and part of the deal in the first term was that Trump would move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and he would acknowledge on behalf of America that the Golan Heights, Syrian land, was officially Israeli land. And there is even a settlement in the Golan Heights called Trump Heights, in recognition of that. So what happened and how this all came about is that after the terrorists bombed and mass murdered Israel into being in 1948, they had a policy of sending key people to the Israeli government, the Sabbateans, sending key people to America who would then give birth to children that were born in America and thus were American citizens by birth. And one of them was a guy called Benjamin Emanuel. Benjamin Emanuel was a bomb maker, a bomber with the Irgun Israeli terrorist operation. Apparently he specialized in bus bombing, so I read. And he went to America as part of this whole process policy. And he gave birth to an Emmanuel who was the White House chief of staff, i.e. handler, Rahm Emanuel, his name was, to Barack Obama in his 2 terms.
And of course, Ari.
Ari? Yeah, Ari.
The most powerful man in Hollywood.
Ari Emanuel was a big Hollywood agent who...
the number one, the top.
Yeah, he was an agent to Trump at one point.
Yeah.
He's a friend of Trump. He's a close friend of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And he was another son of Benjamin Emanuel. And Emanuel didn't complete the 2 terms with Obama because he went off to become, I think it was the first Jewish mayor of Chicago. And then under the Biden administration, he was ambassador to Japan, as I recall. And so...
What a great place he made of Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. So what? Yeah, exactly. That was the idea. Create the chaos and then offer the solution to the chaos, which is advancing your agenda. But there was another son called Ezekiel Emanuel, and he is in the kind of health area, it says here, and he was one of the Biden advisors on the COVID fake vaccine, the COVID lockdowns, et cetera, the COVID response, in other words, and which is quite a trio. Just by
pure coincidence, David. Pure coincidence.
And this is the point. I expose all this in a book called The Trigger, which is about 9/11 and who really was behind it. It wasn't 19 Arab hijackers. One of whom was supposed to have flown Flight 77 into the Pentagon with a fantastic turn that pilots have told me they could never have done or would have struggled to have done. Weeks before he did that, he was banned from a Maryland flight school from hiring a one-engine Cessna because he was such a useless pilot and considered dangerous if they let him free on a plane.
But he was able to take over a commercial 737 or 767 jetliner.
And makes total sense, mate.
You know, overriding the whole system.
Yeah.
David, I'm starting to get the chuckles. Because it is just, you know, when you start to think about it and, you know, I'm listening to you, I'm fascinated. I mean, the ridiculousness of it all.
It is the ridiculous of it. And it's so ridiculous that people say, no, it can't be that ridiculous. Oh, it can. It can. So
and it's the only way, yeah, you can see it, but it's the only way this all makes sense, this inversion.
Yeah. So what happened is that this infiltration of the United States, which started long before, but really became massive and fundamental. So the Jewish population of America, even though it's with Israel, the biggest Jewish population in any country, is about 2%, just about 2%.
Yeah.
And yet, if you look at that 2%, and most of them will be Jewish, not Sabbatean, and you compare it with the positions of power, it's absolutely stunning. So what you
this is just factual. This is not a conspiracy. This is factual. This is people who admit they are Jewish and they are Zionist and they are in those positions. It's just a fact. All Hollywood is run. All the studios are owned by people who say they're Jewish, who support Israel. I mean, look at all the cabinets, the Biden, Trump, everybody. I mean, this is the lawyers. I mean, this is just all the news network executives. I mean, the top executives.
The Sabbateans have taken it over. And when you think you're talking 2% of the American population are Jewish, how many of them are Sabbateans?
Yeah.
Much, much smaller. And the Sabbateans often operate behind the scenes, because this is what the Sabbateans have done. They moved in to create Israel, establish Israel in 1948. What they've done is literally mind control from birth vast numbers of Jewish people to believe certain things that simply aren't true. Jews are the chosen people of God. How do you know that? It's in the Old Testament. All right, okay. So who wrote that? Well, prophets. Yeah, okay. But anyway, so I've seen documentaries, and particularly one I remember, done by a Jewish guy in Israel, that was looking at the way young people in Israel are literally mind controlled from birth to believe that the world hates them. And of course, when you think the world hates you, what do you do? When you think that you need protection from the world, what do? You look to your government and your military to protect you from what you've been manipulated to believe is a danger to you. And so you get this story that's manipulated into the belief systems of so many Jewish people, not all by any means, because they see through it, but a lot. And they are the people who are convinced that all Palestinians are vermin and therefore should be subjected to the horrors that we're seeing, even those that don't take part in violence, like children and stuff.
And the same happens on the other side too, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And there you have the conflict. And
but here you have the situation. How long have I been saying that we live in one-party states? Well, we live in one-party cultures in many ways in terms of the leadership of them, because you have Jewish people in Israel that are bombarded perceptually from cradle to grave with a certain view of Palestinians. And you have Palestinians, well, to be fair, when bombs are coming from the sky, you can understand it, that are brought up to hate Israel. And so you have, as you say quite rightly, the perfect divide and rule situation where violence is considered justified on both sides. Not that great numbers of Palestinians and Israelis justify the violence, but I'm talking about those that do. But if you're going to create a situation where you're playing two sides off against each other, then you need to control both sides. And if you look at the history of the creation of Hamas, then you're looking at Israel government funding. Because the story is, although it's bigger than this, is that there was the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, of Yasser Arafat. And I remember he was on the news all the time when I was growing up. And they wanted to dilute his effect and the PLO's effect by creating another Palestinian grouping, Hamas. So Hamas, to a very large extent, is the creation of Israel, the Israeli government.
And this is well documented. This is well documented now, and they've even admitted it that they were supported.
Yeah, and which brings us to October the 7th, and the justification for literally the genocide is going on in Gaza ever since. In the trigger, I look in detail at the way that Israel has become, along with Silicon Valley, and in some ways eclipsing Silicon Valley, involved in high technology and in AI and so on, surveillance technology. And one of the areas that Israel, out of its military complex at Beersheba in Israel, where something like 20,000 troops are involved in cyber warfare and cyber development. And these major Silicon Valley corporations are in there as well. They have specialized in cybersecurity. And if you are building cybersecurity systems, then you need access to the entire system, and you then write the way that system works in terms of security. And what they've done, Chinese do this too, is they've built in backdoors all over the place, backdoors as they call them, where they can get real-time access to these cybersecurity systems. And I'm talking used by the American government and other governments. So a lot of the technological development that Israel has become increasingly famous for is actually being taken from other countries and other creativity, shall we say.
And they're very proud of their leadership position in technology, Israel. Huh? They brag about it, and they're proud of it. And
well,
remember that former prime minister, or the guy who ran that unit where they would look at Twitter and everything. If there was anything anti-Israel, they would report it and they would follow you. And he actually became the prime minister during the COVID time.
Yeah, well, if you look at this is how it works. It's very systematic. They scan the schools and colleges in Israel for people with these cyber skills or potential cyber skills. When they bring them into the Israeli army by conscription, they don't go and fight anybody. They bring them into this cybersecurity and this cyber development arena. And it's no accident that Israel has become this known as the startup center of the world, because what they do is they develop this technology covertly, like surveillance technology. And they do two things. When these people leave the military from organizations like 8200, which is a cyber warfare specialization operation in the Israeli army, and they'll leave these other areas of the military. They are given technology coming out of the military and technological development arena of Israel, and they start companies called startups. And so these startups, we found this technology, we've developed it. Yeah, of course you have. And they get massive funding, of course they do. And suddenly this technology is everywhere. And the other thing they do is they send off other people from the military to Silicon Valley to infiltrate those companies. So if you look at the history of so many of these people, both the startups and the people in positions of power and influence in Silicon Valley, you'll find 8,200 and the Israeli Defense Forces, Mossad, Shin Bet, the domestic intelligence agency in Israel. For instance, the company that ran the security at 9/11 airports was a subsidiary of a company set up by former agents of Shin Bet, actually out of the Netherlands. And so you have this incredibly advanced surveillance technology, which brings us back to October the 7th. The border fence around Gaza is probably the most defended border fence in the world. And when October the 7th happened, there were former IDF soldiers who were aghast at how it could have happened, because they said the technology is so advanced that if a cockroach or a bird comes close to the fence, we knew about it. But somehow Hamas operatives were allowed to breach that border fence.
Paragliding.
In multiple places. Yeah.
Paragliding.
Yeah.
I'm not laughing at what happened there, but just the paragliding.
Yeah, well, it's just. I mean, it's not funny because of what happened, but it is a joke. So they then breached this border fence, which they never would have done unless they were allowed to, and they enter Israel. And here we have one of the best equipped armies on earth, not least thanks to America, that basically produced no response worth the name until mayhem and death had occurred. And then what happened? They justified the genocide in Gaza as a result of October the 7th, which they clearly, blatantly, obviously allowed to happen.
You see any parallels, Mr. Icke, with something that happened over 20 years ago?
Well, the 9/11 was allowed to happen. Well, it was made to happen as well, but it was allowed to happen. When you look at this in detail, and I did in The Trigger, which is a book about that thick, all the systems that were supposed to respond to hijacks over America went down, were taken down in terms of ordered down. You have a no-fly zone over the Pentagon. Well, how is that policed? What's the point in having a no-fly zone if you don't police it? No point, because it is policed, but wasn't that day. All these scrambling of military jets to meet the threat were all destined to arrive too late. There was some planes that were scrambled to the Flight 77 that was heading towards the Pentagon, they said, from a CIA base in Virginia that was so confused, the pilots, they went out to sea. They thought the threat was coming from the sea. By the time they turned around and headed to the Pentagon, bang, it had happened. Whatever happened.
Whatever happened, I was going to say.
Down the bloody road, from the Pentagon is the Andrews Air Base, where presidents are brought in and then flown to the White House in helicopters. And you say, well, why didn't you scramble jets from the Andrews Air Base? Oh, well, they weren't there. Why weren't they there?
So the Because
all over the eastern seaboard were a series of war games taking place involving, in part, aircraft being scrambled and war games involving moving all these jets out of the various bases into the war games on that day of all those days. And
there was like an exercise. Was there like an exercise?
Dick Cheney oversaw all that. He was involved in all that. And so I've seen the logs of NORAD, the North American response operation to hijacks for both America and Canada. I've seen the logs. And when the reports were coming in of planes being hijacked, Flight 11 and Flight 77, etc., the responders were saying, is this real or is this exercise? It completely scrambled their response because they didn't know what was what, exactly as planned. I do show very clearly in the trigger that Israeli operatives, both out of Israel and in America, were fundamentally involved with American operations like the CIA and the military, the inner core of it, because it's all compartmentalized, were involved in what happened on 9/11 and not 19 Arab hijackers. But you see, what's happening now is, more and more people are pointing out the scale to which Israel owns America, not least through this organization called AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, which sounds like it's some kind of official government operation. No, it's not. It's a lobby group with enormous amounts of money for Israel. And if you look at people like Cynthia McKinney, when she was running for Congress, and when she became a congresswoman, and then was removed thanks to Jewish Sabbatean money, you see how it works. She said that when she was running for Congress the first time, she was struggling for money. And people would come on to her and offer her fundraising events, etc., etc. And she thought, oh, great, I need it. So then the phone call came when they were putting some of these events on. Have you signed the pledge yet? And of course, she, being naive at the time, well, what pledge? The pledge to Israel. The pledge that you will do everything in, if you get in, to do what's best for Israel and to defend Israel. And she said, no, I'm not doing that. Fundraisers disappeared. Yeah. Somehow she got in, and then they funded her opponent massively and got her out for another election. But she went public when she was in Congress. She was one of the few people in Congress, if about the only one really, that was challenging the official story of 9/11. But she was pointing out, and others have too, very, very few for obvious reasons, that all these people that get funding from AIPAC and other Jewish organizations, Sabbatean, I would say, in America, have to make this pledge that they'll do everything they can to support Israel and make sure Israel is well funded and weapons and all that stuff. And if they don't, then they don't get the money. And we're talking, $1 million and more that some of these people get from this AIPAC source. And so when Netanyahu goes to speak to both houses of Congress, as he does ridiculously regularly for the size of his country. That's why you see all these Congress people fitting springs to their backside as they walk in, so they can boing, 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 standing ovations. There was
Trump helping Netanyahu, pushing the chair so that he can sit comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, all of it, and you see them. You can go on there and see some of his speeches to both houses of Congress.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that clip, David?
Hit the chair and they're straight up for the next standing ovation. It's unbelievable.
Did you see that clip, David? Did you see that clip where this lady was wandering the halls of Congress or the Senate, and outside of each office, each office of every congressman, there was the American flag, and next to it, the Israeli flag.
Yeah,
that was still, it was not surprising to me, but it was still shocking to see.
And then you have alternative media stars who promoted Trump. Oh yeah, vote for Trump, he's a savior. And then now are going, well, he seems like he's controlled by Israel. Oh, come on. Get them over the line and then defend your credibility by criticizing him. Yeah, okay, I believe you. And yet it was obvious all along what he was going to do. And that is whatever Israel wants, Israel gets, because he's owned by them. And, you know, the whole Epstein thing, and I've talked to some of the women that were involved as young women then, who would have told me how he had microphones and hidden cameras all over the place to compromise the rich and famous people. And who was it again that Epstein called his best friend for years? Oh, Donald Trump. That's right. That's that.
The deal maker.
Yeah. So, even The Art of the Deal, his book, Art of the Deal, was written by someone else. Yeah. He's an idiot. But he's a very compliant idiot. So he'll do as he's told. So, and at the moment, he's devastating America and its economy and freedoms and having a big impact on the rest of the world. Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. I think we can get into that in a second. But
David, you told me you only had an hour, but we're still going. You know, right? Don't you have to go?
Yeah,
We should.
What I'll do, I'll just cover this bit, and then I'll get into current events very, very quickly, and you know, we've done quite.
I knew this was going to happen because I mean I don't mind. I'm just thinking about your timetable and what you have to do.
So we have this guy and these Congress people who are owned by Israel, and Israel gets what it wants. And where is this going? Let's just come round to that. Yeah. Well, you see, there's two types of people in this whole Jewish arena. Well, there's multiple types. Many people that oppose all this stuff. But there's two groups in what I'm about to say. There are those, a lot of them rabbis, who are so mind-controlled, so mesmerized by their ridiculous stories, so controlled by the Talmud and the Old Testament and the Kabbalah, that they believe what they're saying. And then there's the key Sabbateans, who are trying not to laugh, who know it's a nonsense, but they're using it to get what they want. And so the story is this. I'm coming from the rabbis here, the extreme rabbis. They say that the prophecies are that the third temple, third quote, Solomon's temple, will be built on what Jews and Christians call Temple Mount, where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is currently, and has been for hundreds of years. And then when that happens, the Messiah will come. The world leader. He'll lead the world. He'll be the world dictator, basically. And so what's happening is that these people that are running this show are making the prophecies happen, not because God's making them happen, the rabbis think it is. They're making them happen. So there's very advanced plans now for the new Solomon's Temple on Temple Mount after the demolition of Al-Aqsa Mosque. To such an extent that the prophecies say that a red heifer will be born and will never have a yoke on its back and will be sacrificed as part of the preparation for the new temple, the third temple. So not to worry God about this too much. They get some heifers from Texas and ship them in, right? I mean, God must have inspired them, I guess. And if you had suggested not that long ago that they were going to demolish the Al-Aqsa Mosque and put up a new Solomon's Temple, people would have laughed at you. They'd say, "Can you imagine the bloody bloodbath that would happen if they did that?" Well, look at it now.
It's moving fast.
You've got Gaza destroyed. You've got the Palestinians being bombed one after the other. You've got Trump talking about moving them out to other countries. You've got the West Bank being completely taken over by these Jewish settlers, as they call them, crazies who believe all the prophecies. And suddenly the unthinkable becomes very thinkable and very possible. But there's another aspect to this. These lunatics, and they are, if you take mind-controlled people to be no longer in control of their own minds, which they're not, they have a situation where they're blaming, in effect, the same people for destroying the first two temples, Solomon's Temple and the Second Temple. And so the first temple, they say, was destroyed as a result of the Edomites, who were, according to official history, a people in that area just to the south of modern Israel. What they say then, these lunatics, is that the Edomites became the Romans, and the Romans destroyed the Second Temple. They say the Romans then became the West and America. And part of their prophecy is that that Edom, the West now, as they will define it, has to be destroyed before the Messiah can come. And you will see rabbis who have just enough intelligence to remember to breathe, saying that Trump will be seen as an eternal hero because he's destroying Edom. in terms of America and the wider West. They're also saying that the mass influx out of the Middle East and the other areas of the world into Europe is part of the destruction of the West, and therefore the Islamic movement into the West is all part of Islam being used to destroy Edom and its culture. And when you then look at those that have funded the agencies and the policies of opening the borders of Europe, you are looking at overwhelmingly Jewish sources, or Sabbatean sources, as I would call them. And this is why, one reason why, we have had this focus in the Trump administration to this day. I mean, the man's never been in a Christian church unless it suited him. I mean,
I was going to make a lewd joke, but that's not.
A Christian, yeah. And I'm an Eskimo, yeah. Gotcha.
Maybe if
he's now saying, "Oh, we're going to make America Christian," and all this MAGA movement is all overwhelmingly focused on Christianity. So many of these people, Russell Brand and what have you, have converted to Christianity. These MAGA influencers, as they're called. God help us.
It's so weird how they move in tandem when it comes to that. If you look at former alternative thinkers and open-minded people, all of a sudden, at the same time, they became super religious and.
Well, you've had Eva van Dingebroek in the Netherlands, this activist, MAGA activist who's converted to the Roman Catholicism. You've had Candace Owens, who was a Christian, but now is converted to Roman Catholicism. You've had J.D. Vance, who's converted to Roman Catholicism, and others too. Now, why is this? Well, this is one reason for it. There will be others. Is that if you're Christian and you believe in the Bible, and the Bible is the Word of God, and God can't be wrong, then first of all, if you believe the Bible is the Word of God and God can't be wrong, then you have endless numbers of circles to square in terms of contradiction. Because the God of the Old Testament, particularly, is a bloodthirsty tyrant. I mean, just read the Old Testament, bloodthirsty tyrant. Who would love what's happening in Gaza because his chosen people are doing that, and so you where I'm going with this is that if you are Christian and you believe that, then you believe. Russell Brand has said something recently that if you're a Christian, and I'm a Christian, he says, then you must accept that there is a sacred connection between Jewish people and that land. Well, that's what the Old Testament says, mate. You don't mean it's true. Oh, but I'm a Christian. I've got to believe it's true. It's the Word of God. This is where we're going. So you're going to build, not just through Christian Zionism, which is an extreme version of it, but you're going to build a lot of support by Christian believers in this whole idea of the prophecies, and how Israel's supposed to be produce the Messiah. Sabbatai Zevi claimed to be at one point, was talked about, that's going to run the world, literally run the world from a central point, i.e. Israel, greater Israel as they want it to be.
So now we get to this sort of final stage. And before I ask that question, is that I've also been to Israel many years ago once, and I had the same feeling about it as you did. I thought it was going to be a massive country. I didn't know you could drive from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in 25 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
I actually tried to book a flight back then, and it was only 4 minutes. And I thought, this can't be true. I'll check it out when I'm there. Yeah, you just drive there, and then there's nothing. And then you have, what's that place called in the south? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But I said to myself, it can't be true. It's in the news all day long. Something else must be going on. This is ridiculous. And of course, now many years later, you start to find out it works very differently. But so what was the purpose of creating this? And what is, I wouldn't say the end game, but what is the destination?
Well, there's many levels of it. First of all, there's something about that land. If you think about it, Jerusalem is sacred to three religions, the three major religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And if you go back through history, what we call history anyway, and you go into the pre-Christian period, shall we say, and the pagan period, as it's called, they focused on energetic points that were incredibly influential in the control of energetic power within this earth reality. And when Christianity started taking over from the pagan sites, they did two things depending on their level of knowledge. Some of them built their churches and cathedrals on these sites to suppress the evil energies that were worshipped by the pagans. Yeah, okay. But the inner core, those who knew, they built them on these sites because they were vortex points within the Earth's electromagnetic energy grid. And if you can control certain points on that grid, you can have a massive impact, not just on the power you can accrue, but actually on the perceptions of the population. Because if you can control particular areas, particular vortex points, where lots of these so-called ley lines or meridian lines of energetic force cross, that's why they create vortexes, then if you can put in certain frequencies into those vortex points, you are impacting upon the Earth's electromagnetic field with those low frequency states of being. And we, who on one level are an electromagnetic field, are interacting with this field all the time. And the nature of that field impacts upon us. So if you can keep the field in a low vibrational state, then you are going to have a heck of a chance of keeping vast numbers of humans in that same low vibrational state. Because, you know, if you get three violins and you pluck the strings of two of them to a particular note, and then you put the third violin in there, then that third violin, you haven't touched it, those strings will start vibrating to the same note as the other two. It's called entrainment. In other words, if you have a dominant frequency, it will impact upon other frequencies and turn them into the dominant frequency. And so if you can fill this electromagnetic field, which we're constantly interacting with low vibrational, not just frequencies, but perceptual states, which manifest as frequencies, then you're going to impact on the perceptual state of vast numbers of people.
This is very interesting, David. When you were there, when you were there, did you get a sense of that land had something?
Well,
different, special.
When you for instance, just a very quick story. I was invited years and years ago to Canterbury Cathedral, which is on a big vortex point in the east of England, by a guy who was putting on what they call a passion play. It's basically the Jesus story. And what they were going to do was walk around different parts of the cathedral with different scenes in this passion play story. Long story short, because of that, when the cathedral closed to the public that night, I had 2 hours before the passion play started, just to have the free run of the place. And what was happening at that time is they were doing excavations, kind of repairs to the cathedral. And what they'd found was remains of churches that were on that site before the cathedral. And the cathedral's old enough, it goes way, way back. And what you'll have is that where that will go back to is that cathedral is on a vortex point, which was focused upon by the pagans. That their inner circle knew all this. You know, the Celts had a priestly class called the Druids, and the Druids were this class of people that were initiated into this knowledge of the Earth's energy systems. This is why they build stone circles where they do. This is why they put standing stones where they do. It's an electromagnetic grid. It's actually physics, you know. I mean, I have said many times and written at length about the fact that we live in a simulation. And on one level, that simulation is electrical and electromagnetic. And therefore, the Earth is part of this simulated reality and has above, so below, because this reality is holographic. What we experience as the physical world is a holographic world. And one of the great characteristics of holograms is that every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole. So if you take a holographic print and you cut it into 4 and you fire the laser at the 4 pieces, you don't get a quarter of the picture. You get a quarter-size version of the whole picture, because the way holograms operate, and they're all based on frequencies, no matter how small you go, the whole picture will be there. All the information from the whole picture will be in the parts. And so it may be less clear, it may have less clarity, but it's the same information that you get in the whole picture. This is why people that do reflexology and acupuncture and what have you can find parts of the body, different parts of the body, that represent the organs and the body as a whole. Reflexology is looking at the hands and the feet, and it's finding, oh yeah, this relates to the heart, because it's a hologram. The body's a hologram. Everything in our reality is a hologram. So everything's a smaller version of the whole. So as the simulation itself is a electromagnetic construct, so is the Earth, which is a smaller version of the whole of this simulation. This is how it works. This is why more and more scientists are saying it looks like the world is holographic. Well, you know why? Because it is. I've been saying it since the, just after the millennium. Well, earlier than that in terms of holograms, but since the millennium, this is a simulation. And so the Earth reflects the whole, and the Earth has this electromagnetic grid system, which we call ley lines and vortexes, where loads of lines cross, these vortexes are thrown up. And the other thing about the vortexes is, the major ones, is that where these vortexes are created by these lines crossing, thins out the difference between this dimension and the next dimension, called the astral dimension. And so when you look at where they do their satanic rituals, often they're in churches, or they're in ancient sites, because that's where the vortex is, which makes it easier for these non-human entities to interact with our reality through their rituals from their reality, which is beyond human sight, which is almost everything's beyond human sight. What we can see is pathetic. And so when you look at places like Jerusalem, the fact that all these religions focus on that area, and particularly focus on Temple Mount, you are looking at a freaking major
energy field
there.
Yeah.
And the fact that they want that land is not an accident. It's not a coincidence. But it's like we live in two worlds. We have the world of the population, which are kept in ignorance, only let them know as much as they need to know to serve us. And then you have the world of the cult, which is a global network of secret societies, fiercely compartmentalized, so that the inner core are the only people that absolutely know what's going on. The rest of them only know some of it. And that inner core knows how this whole thing works. And thus you need to uncover what they know. That's why I spent 36 years doing so now. Uncover what they know, because then you can see events in the world in a completely different perspective to what you'd see if you only saw them from a 5 sense reality point of view. So they're playing this stuff all the time. They're playing with this energy. They're playing with manipulating perception of reality. But
at the end of the day, they're dumb. They're stupid.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
They're focusing on Jerusalem. That's where they want to run the world from, and they tell you that's where they want to run the world from.
Yeah, they tell you. Yeah, they
get an understanding now of a lot of things that have happened and why they have happened.
But they're so unnecessary. If you look at it from a humanity point of view, from a human point of view,
well, this is the point, mate. You see, this is it. This simulation is created by a non-human force, ultimately a very, very inverted, distorted state of consciousness. And it's feeding off human low vibrational energy. I mean, this is becoming more understood now, but I mean, you only have to go back to the ancients. They were talking about this. We're just seeing another level of how it can be explained now.
So basically, they're feeding off suffering of people.
Yeah. So they're feeding off, because these entities are low vibrational in nature.
Yeah.
So high vibrational energy, joy, love, peace, all that stuff, they can't absorb that.
No.
In the same way. What they need is frequencies of energy that sustain them and empower them, that are within the frequency band they operate in, which by the very nature of what they're doing is very low vibrational.
And that's how they can control the masses too.
Yeah,
in order to keep them as low as possible.
So what they set out to do is to create this illusory reality where you think you're in a world that you're not, and to manipulate events, perceptions within that reality that put people in a low vibrational state from which they will generate. This is well known by science, that when we feel emotion and when we think, we're generating energy, we're generating frequencies. And the nature of the frequency is dictated by the nature of the emotion and the nature of the thought. So depression and fear, the big one, and resentment and conflict and hatred. These are all low vibrational frequencies. And that's lunch. So they want a world that generates those frequencies. They don't want a world that generates high frequencies, because that's no good to them. So they have created this simulation, and they are generating events, manipulating events, not least through this global cult, which represents them in this human reality, to elicit, to get the population to generate these low vibrational states of being. So you have wars, you have suffering, you have all the things that put people in a low vibrational state, because that's what they have to do to use people as what we are to their, which is basically batteries. You know, when the Morpheus character in The Matrix held up that battery and said, the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world designed to turn humans into one of these. But he was telling a profound truth. That's why they're going on.
And this is the only explanation that makes sense.
Yeah, well,
as you look at the world, what's happening. I mean, I won't call it a struggle for me, but it's also not a frustration, but a bewilderment and just an annoyance to see how well they are succeeding into keeping people in such low energy fields and low energy negativity, the depression, whilst there's so much more and so many more beautiful things, and it's such a wonderful experience to be on this planet. It's not always positive, but I mean, it's an incredible experience, and that they're succeeding and keeping so many people there is.
Well, the thing is, Robert, we in our foundation delusion are living a fake self-identity, which is manipulated into us from cradle to grave. It's what I call the phantom self. If you self-identify with being human, if you self-identify with being all the subdivisions of human, Jew, Gentile, Muslim, Hindu, whatever, and the color of your skin and the nature of your culture, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know, enjoy it, but come from the perspective that what you really are is consciousness. Yeah. You are a state of being aware. You are a formless state of being aware, ultimately. And if you can hold that awareness, that self-identity, then you start to realize that what you're experiencing is not you, it's an experience. That's all it is. Being black is an experience. Being white is an experience. Being a Jew is an experience. It's not a forever state of I.
No.
So what they do when you come into this reality, and I go into this in detail in the books, your memory's wiped, and explain how that's done. And so you're born, some people's memory is not completely wiped, which is why they can remember so-called past lives and stuff. But most people, it's a blank. And you come in and you don't know what's going on. Or anything. Who am I? Where am I? Even if we ask those questions, most people don't. What's on the telly? Okay, who am I? I don't care. What's on the telly? But it's a self-identity that focuses on the labels of a human life, the IMRs, as I call them. And so when you are explaining who you are to people, you give them your birthplace, you give them your job, you give them your culture, maybe your religion, and your self-identity is based on your racial type. These are like they're like wearing a spacesuit on the moon and identifying with the spacesuit.
Yeah.
Where it was built, who built it, what color it is. It's ridiculous. We are consciousness. However, if you start to realize the true nature of self, that awareness, that expanded awareness of self, I am consciousness, ultimately, and potentially I am all consciousness, then what that does is it starts to expand your state of awareness. That automatically, as you expand your self-identity and your sense of self, you're expanding your sense of awareness. And at that point, you start to access levels of reality that are, and levels of knowledge, levels of insight, levels of awareness that are beyond this simulated trap, which is tiny by comparison with infinity. And you start to see things. You start to see the trap that you couldn't see before. You start to see how the dots connect in the ways that you only saw dots before. This is what happens. This is true awakening. What we have with the fake alternative media is a fake awakening, where they're telling you, oh, it's just the deep state and deep states and Democrats and all this load of rubbish that these people sell you. And so what you don't want, if you're running this simulated trap and this energetic vampire trap, you don't want people to remember who they are and their true nature, because you know where that's going to lead, and it ain't good for you. Yeah. So the whole focus is to keep literally your focus of attention in the realm of the five senses and the labels of the five senses and the sense of reality of the five senses, which are the body senses. Yeah. The body's like a headset in a virtual reality game. It's decoding the game and delivering to you a version of reality that's nothing like the one you're actually living in. And so keeping people disconnected from that expanded level of consciousness is not only crucial to this control continuing, it's absolutely bottom line essential. Yeah. And one of the effects that I've seen, or we've all seen, but I've read a lot about it recently, particularly recently, of this COVID fake vaccine, is that it's focusing people's attention more and more into the five senses and out of the expanded levels of awareness.
I've noticed this too. I spoke to somebody about it yesterday. I mean, the zombification which had been going on for a long time of people, it seems to have accelerated since the COVID years, and that could certainly be part of it.
You're spot on. I mean, that's what's happened, and that's why it's happened. And this is where we come maybe to the climax of this, although I could go on talking for hours.
We know, but it's been fascinating. It's been fascinating.
That's the AI agenda. Yeah. Because what's happening with Trump is he's telling the MAGA audience what they want to hear, while doing the opposite, actually, overwhelmingly. And that's all a smokescreen to get them on board with the AI agenda of your Musks and your Larry Ellisons and your Sam Altmans and your Peter Thiels and your Mark Andreessens and your David Saxes, all these AI billionaires that are pushing this AI agenda. And the AI agenda is, and this has been articulated by people like Ray Kurzweil at Google, this so-called futurist, that they want by 2030, in that period, to have humans connected to artificial intelligence, and increasingly more and more after that. And in Kurzweil's words, once that connection to artificial intelligence is made from the human brain to artificial intelligence, then artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking is basically negligible. In other words, deleted. And what they're doing is they are overriding consciousness, because so many people, staggering to me anyway, even today or over the years, have not asked these questions: who am I? Where am I? What's the nature of this reality? But if AI is doing your thinking, what you think is what AI thinks. How you emotionally respond is how AI emotionally responds. That's the idea. Then you're not even going to think of questioning the big questions of who we are, where we are, and what's going on. You're just going to be a zombie. You're just going to be like a computer terminal on someone else's internet. That's the idea. And it's the ultimate goal to completely disconnect the humans from expanded levels of consciousness, because who is going to question anything once AI is controlling your mind? And that's the idea. And more it's happening.
And I think more and more. I mean, to me, it's staggering. It's that a lot of people will fall for getting chipped because they're too depressed. They live on such a low energy level. The question is too difficult. Who am I? What is life? They're too far away from going there. And then, okay, just give it to me if it makes life more easy. It's frightening.
Yeah, there's two things going on, you see. There's the hard sell of AI, fusion with the human body, human brain, and there's the soft sell. They both end up at the same place. Mm-hmm. The hard sell comes from your Bill Gateses and your Klaus Schwabs and your Ray Kurzweils and many others, these AI billionaires I talk about. Which will be gods. Oh, that'd be great. You just get connected to artificial intelligence. That'd be great. Will be gods. Next stage of human evolution, fourth industrial revolution.
Yes.
And then there's the soft sell, because there's been over the decades people that don't want that. They're very skeptical of it. They're very concerned about it. So I'll call them the pushbackers. They don't want that. So what you do is you have to get them on board with your AI agenda, because you want everything. And to do that, first of all, you have to tell them what they want to hear. You have to look at what they're concerned about and tell them you're going to do something about it.
I know where you're going with this. I mean, my mother was in a wheelchair, and now she's chipped, and now she runs a marathon.
Yeah, and we're going into the whole Trump-Musk psyop, which is what it is. So Musk positioned himself many years ago, because this cult plays the long game. He positioned himself as the AI skeptic. Oh, AI could be the end of humanity. Oh, really? Well, yeah, but that's what you want. And ever since he said that, he's just promoted more and more AI, and never more than present day. But
2 years ago, Elon, what keeps you awake at night? AI taking over people and the world in control. 2 years later, the guy is fully invested in AI, promotes it like it's
exactly
the best thing.
Exactly. But he said a crucial thing, Robert. He said, AI could be the end of humanity, but it's inevitable that AI is going to surpass human awareness. So what we've got to do is fuse with humans with AI so we can keep up with it.
And let the good people like us run it.
Yeah.
With good intentions.
Exactly. Trust me. Yeah, trust you, Elon.
me.
Trust you.
Trust me. Trust Elon.
You to tell me the time in a room full of clocks, mate.
and our great leader Trump, our savior Trump.
Oh yeah. You know, I mean, talk about life for a living. I mean, that, you know, if that guy ever told the truth, Trump, he would genetically implode from the shock. But you have this key. It's inevitable, and this is a really important area because it's all psychological. It's all psychological manipulation. The whole thing is perception manipulation. The whole conspiracy is perception manipulation, because once you control perception, you control behavior, and so inevitable takes you from "I want to stop this" to "I want to mitigate this as best I can." It's a completely different way you're approaching it. You've diluted your opposition because you think it's inevitable. Therefore, we've got to mitigate the effects. And what they're doing with the MAGA is telling them what they want to hear, claiming to be about free speech while deporting people that criticize Israel. And they are giving them the soft sell to the same end as the hard sell, which is the human AI fusion. And it's that is where it's all leading, because, see, if you are in a situation where you are eliciting frequencies, energy from people like batteries, because of their perceptual state, you are manipulating their perceptual state to generate the frequencies that you can absorb. Then if AI is doing human thinking and emotional response, then you now have your energetic sustenance literally on tap, because you direct AI thinking and emotional response to generate those frequencies. And you literally turn people into full-blown zombie batteries. That's the idea. That's where it's all been leading. Up to this point, they've had to manipulate perception to generate the frequencies they want. Now the idea is to completely control those frequencies by completely controlling how people think and emotionally respond. That's where we're going. This is the big picture. I mean, don't ask Joe Rogan about this, or Russell Brand, or Alex Jones, or any of these people, Tucker Carlson. Don't ask it, and people like Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, New Kid on the Block. I mean, don't ask them about any of this stuff, because they'll think you're mad if you even talk about it. But this is what is happening. And this alternative media is there to hold the barricade at here and no further. So you don't.
Why is it that everything we talk about, David, leads to new thoughts? And I think about something else, and then I want to talk to you about another thing. And so I'll stop. But I always had the impression, the idea that the people who are creating this, who live on that energy and who want to be God, I think their biggest dream is to live forever. And I think this is also where AI comes into play, that they're actually fantasizing about if I, when I leave my body, because they want to live forever. They always live till very old and live horrible lives, and, the body goes and everything. Then I can, all my godlike wisdom can be in AI, and I will live forever.
Yeah, because the thing is that these people are not geniuses.
No.
Elon Musk, I rest my case, but none of them are. They're vehicles, they're gophers, and their knowledge is also limited to that which can serve the agenda of this non-human force. It doesn't have to know the whole agenda, it just has to serve it in its area. And so the fact that we are consciousness, and that we as consciousness live forever, and we are exploring all the infinite dimensions and realities and experiences of reality forever. That's beyond them. They themselves are focused on the body consciousness. That's why all these people, these billionaires, are putting vast amounts of money into this cryonics and stuff, where they freeze the body, and then when they can cure it, they bring it back. I mean, they're lunatics.
And fear of dying. They have a huge fear of dying.
Yeah, some of them do. Some of them know that they're going to come back pretty bloody quick. Depends on what level we're talking about. But in the end, if you realize that we're all consciousness, and therefore we're all each other ultimately, and what happens, this is why self-identity and the manipulation of self-identity is so crucial to this whole conspiracy, is what you do, and this will come back to what we've been talking about most of the time. If you self-identify with a Jew as being Jewish, then there's a set of rules and regulations you have to follow to be considered Jewish, and don't step out of those beliefs, otherwise you're not Jewish, or you're against the group, against the clan. And you have to somehow follow the history of what you're told Jewish means. If you're Islamic, it's the same story. If you're a Hindu, same story. If you're right-wing political, same story. If you're left-wing political, same story. There are rules and regulations and do's and don'ts and opinions you can have and can't have. And once you fall for a belief system that's without question, then there are vast, vast areas of potential knowledge, awareness, insight, understanding that you deny yourself immediately. Because if you're a Christian, you're not going to go into that area and that area and that area, because if you do, your Christianity belief is going to come under threat through information, through knowledge. Same with all the other religions. So they're prisoners of the mind. I have described for decades and decades now religion as the greatest form of mind control ever invented. And you can throw politics into that as well. Where you have a one-party state ultimately controlled by the same people, that gives the public the fake option choice of this part of the one-party state or that part of the one-party state, because we're going to end up in the same point anyway. So it's once you start self-identifying with your body, your name, your labels of a human life, you're already entrapped. You're perceptually entrapped. We are consciousness, and this is just a brief experience. You can have the experience as long as you know that it's just an experience. It's not the real you. If you think it's the real you, then you will hate people in a different type of body than you. You will hate people with a different kind of belief system to you, and you'll provide all the divide and rule necessary for the few to control the many, which has been the theme of human history.
And that's it. That's it. That's it. If we can get past that and see that, it's all over.
Yeah, it's all over. It's all over.
And people ask you always.
People see it.
People ask you always, David, what is the solution? And you show me the problems. You never give a solution. Same. They say the same to me. But I basically say a similar thing. I mean, it's us. It's us. We're the solution. And
Our perceptions are the solution.
Yeah.
Our self-identity is the solution.
Yeah.
If you
let go of that.
If you identify with being human and the subdivisions of human, you are identifying immediately with limitation.
Yeah.
Because so many things you can't do if that's who you are. But when you realize your consciousness, and the more you delve into quantum physics, you can see how awareness, perception creates reality. It creates it on the quantum level, below what we call matter, and it rearranges the energy to present to you a version of your perceptions. And so people we bring into our lives, experiences we have, are ultimately created by us and our perceptions, not just conscious perceptions, but subconscious perceptions. The subconscious is behind, this is official psychology, is behind 95% of human behavior. Yeah. It's the subconscious they're after, even more than the conscious. But if you can bring the subconscious and make it conscious, then you take control of it, because it's no longer manipulating your life without you realizing it's manipulating your life, and that your emotional reactions are coming from this subconscious programming, subliminal programming below the threshold of the conscious mind. It's coming from your conscious mind, and the conscious mind can make choices that you can't make from the subconscious, because they are in a level of unconsciousness to you, to the conscious mind, and thus you're responding to them and their impulses, but you don't realize you are. You don't. It's like you react in a way, and you go, what took over me? Yeah, exactly. What did take over you? It was your subconscious mind took over. And if you look at a subliminal advertisement, I've used some of these pictures in my books from time to time. If you look at a subliminal insert into an advertisement, I'll give you an example. In one of my books, I used a picture of 4 plants, and there was a subliminal image in it. And you show it to people, and you say, there's a subliminal image in this. Where is it? They can't see it, because the image is subconscious. And then you point out where it is. And what it was, these 4 plants, the gaps between them spelt the word sex very clearly. And once you point that out, from the moment you do, every single time, bar none, they see that picture again, the subliminal insert is the first thing they see. Why? Because the subconscious has been made conscious. It no longer impacts upon you because you can see it. And so what people like me are doing, and people like you are doing, is we're taking the subliminal manipulation, the unconscious manipulation, and we're making it conscious to people. We're saying, look, this is how it works. And the conscious mind's going, oh, I can see it now. It's the worst nightmare, because the control of humanity is subconscious control, overwhelmingly, not completely, overwhelmingly. And if you can make the subconscious manipulation conscious, you take away its power, because people can see what you're doing. And this is why during COVID, some people could see it and most people could not. But a lot more can see it now.
That's good. That's certainly a positive. That's certainly a positive. Because we keep going, David. We keep going.
Yeah,
and the thing is that people always need to grasp onto some form of identity, because otherwise they say, if I don't have that, there's nothing. But the paradox is, in the nothingness, there's everything.
Everything. Everything. See, what we're dealing with is all possibility. That's what infinite awareness is. It's all possibility. Yeah. And so what you have in the human mind reality is something has to be one thing or the other. It must be something that's everything, can't be nothing.
Yeah.
But within all possibility, everything also has to be nothing, otherwise it's not all possibility. And so all the paradoxes disappear once you realize you're dealing with all possibility. And so we have the possibility of being trapped in this ludicrous perceptual prison, or we have the possibility of taking back control of our perceptions and not getting out of here, because we're not actually in here. Our perceptions tell us we are, but we're not really. I mean, once you get deeper into this, it's fascinating.
It's a trick of a con artist, basically.
Totally.
And it's fantastic. But you know, the last thing, I always laugh at people that I see them and they say, "I know who I am," and I can sort of tell, you know, just by the way they behave, they have no idea. They're not following their hearts. They're not following their passions. They're not following any, you know, sort of basic good intuitions or something like that. And I know who I am. I stopped self-identifying or labeling myself about basically everything except maybe that I'm a man. But even that, you can attack me because listen, we come for 50%. We come from a woman and from a man. So what is that all about? All right, but I'd like to be, you know. But that it stops there. I'm not a podcaster. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not that. I keep an open mind about everything. And that's fine. It works out, and and nobody can. I don't feel attacked when people try to trick me into putting myself into some sort of box. You go F yourself.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. You're not a podcaster. Podcasting is what you do. It's not what you are. That's.
I am a podcaster.
That's the big penny drop.
And. It's basically, sorry. David, thanks for your time. Especially, you know, it's always like we can talk for hours. We did. You had 1 hour, and we did 2 hours and 33 minutes. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
And the Israel thing was super fascinating, and people will have opinions because people are trapped in their minds and all that. But I mean, I have to say, you know, you don't like compliments, so close your ears. But I think you are an incredible teacher too, as in, you know, the way you can explain it, and your history in broadcasting, you know, makes it easy for you to communicate. And it filled in a lot of gaps that I had about Israel, made it all make sense. And so I thank you for that. And
no
we
problem,
speak soon, David.
And people rightly have their own opinions about what we've been talking about. But I would just say, make sure they're your opinions and not someone else's recycled.
That was a perfect ending. Thank you, David.
Thanks, mate. Bye.
Het vrije geluid laat zich niet censureren. Jensen.nl